Hey guys, tonight we drift high into the Andes where thin air tastes like stone and starlight. You're walking along a mountain trail older than any empire, watching farmers in woven ponchos pick tiny green leaves under a bruised blue sky. These are the sacred coca leaves, small, waxy, unimpressive to look at. But to the Inca, they're a divine bridge between earth and gods. You chew one just as they do. It tastes bitter, almost metallic, but then your lungs open up. The cold feels gentler, the climb less cruel. You can suddenly walk for miles without food or fatigue. You don't realize it yet, but this little leaf will one day become one of the most powerful and destructive drugs on Earth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, what's your location and local time right now? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You follow the mountain wind up to the terraces of Machu Picchu. Priests hum ancient hymns, their mouths bulging slightly from coca leaves. They believe coca comes from Mama Coca, a goddess who gave her body to humanity after her death, so mortals could taste a hint of divine endurance. Chewing the leaf isn't a vice, it's a prayer. Each offering to the gods begins the same, a handful of leaves, sometimes mixed with lime or ash, pressed gently against the lips, and then blown skyward. The Incas say the leaves carry messages to the heavens, like green paper planes of devotion. You almost laugh, but it's strangely beautiful. Historians still argue whether coca was a tool of oppression or liberation. Some say the Inca elite gave it to laborers to keep them working longer, turning faith into fuel for empire. Others insist it was genuinely sacred, a shared bond that softened the brutality of daily life. Whatever the truth, coca's role was spiritual, medicinal, and social all at once. It calmed hunger, soothed altitude sickness, and even eased childbirth pains. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the 1500s, swords glinting and muskets smoking, they didn't understand it. To them, chewing leaves was pagan nonsense. They tried banning it, but soon enough, greed changed their minds. Picture a mine in Potosi, the mountain the Spanish called the Rich Hill. You stand there, choking on dust and darkness, watching enslaved workers collapse from exhaustion. Someone passes them coca leaves, and suddenly they can work hours longer. The overseers notice. Suddenly, coca isn't devil s work anymore, it s God s gift to industry. The church even approves it once the king's taxes start rolling in. Funny how quickly faith can follow profit. You keep walking through centuries of dust. Mules haul silver, priests bless the mines, and coca becomes an unofficial currency among miners. They trade it for food, safety, even friendship. But as it travels down the mountains toward Spanish ships, the leaves begin to lose their magic. In the humid holds of galleons, they rot before reaching Europe. The old world isn't ready for its new obsession yet. Still, rumors spread. European priests write back to Spain, calling coca a marvel against weariness. Naturalists sketch it in notebooks, dreaming of new medicines. And somewhere, in a dim apothecary in Seville, a curious chemist stares at a dried coca leaf, wondering what secret does this humble plant hide inside? That question will haunt scientists for centuries. You pause at the edge of a mountain cliff, looking down over the empire that once thrived on this plant. The sun sinks behind the peaks, painting everything in copper and gold. Somewhere below, farmers still chew coca, whispering prayers that sound older than language itself. You can almost taste the irony. The same leaf that gave them strength to survive would one day give the world something far deadlier. But for now, it's just a leaf, just survival, just another night in the high Andes. The stars above flicker like the tips of cigarettes. You exhale softly, watching your breath fade into the cold air. You don't know it yet, but this quiet ritual will soon travel across oceans and centuries, transforming from holy leaf to laboratory powderant, rewriting history in its wake. You descend from the sacred mountains and into the chaos of conquest. The air grows thicker, less divine, more human. You can hear the clang of armor, the cries of translators, the wet slap of oars on colonial rivers. Spain has come for gold, but they've found something stranger. When conquistadors first see the Inca chewing green leaves, they sneer. To them, coca is witchcraft, a relic of heathen gods. The priests condemn it, calling it a leaf of the devil. But then, on the long marches through the Andes, they notice something inconvenient. Their native porters can carry twice the load and barely eat. Q, watching from the shadows, see greed overtaking faith. Soon, coca leaves become part of Spain's empire-building machinery. Each miner, deep inside Potosia's hellish tunnels, gets a daily ration of coconut, as claims, but as control. The plant that once symbolized divine endurance now fuels an economy of exhaustion. You can almost hear the crunch of leaves between teeth as men work by candlelight, turning mountains into money. Historians still argue whether this was exploitation or adaptation. Some say coca kept miners alive, protecting them from altitude and hunger. Others call it spiritual slavery, a way to drug the body while the soul remained chained. Either way, the Spanish crown notices the profits. They legalize coca, tax it heavily, and even appoint official leaf counters. Imagine that, a bureaucrat measuring devotion by the ounce. You wander into a colonial church in Cusco, frescoes fading under centuries of dust. One painting catches your eye, the Virgin Mary holding coca leaves in her hand. That's how deep the transformation went. What was once blasphemy is now blessed because it pays. In the silver boom of the 16th and 17th centuries, coca money helps fund Spain's global dominance. Ships leave Lima loaded with silver ingots, coca-stained and blood-earned, bound for Seville and Madrid. You picture the nobles sipping wine under chandeliers, unaware, perhaps uncaring, that their fortunes come from men who survive on leaves. There's a moment of bitter irony here. The old world reaps the rewards of a plant it can yet preserve. Coca leaves rot before they cross the Atlantic. Apothecaries in Europe receive brown mush, useless and odorless. They can't replicate the effects, and the miracle of the Andes remains a whisper. Still, explorers and naturalists write glowing reports. You overhear one 17th century Jesuit note: this leaf imparts vigor, removes fatigue, and keeps the stomach from hunger. Another calls it a divine providence for the natives. European curiosity grows. But curiosity, like coca, is addictive and dangerous. You shift forward in time. It's the 18th century now. Scientific revolution. Men in powdered wigs and curiosity-filled laboratories. They test everything. Frogs, mercury, lightning and, yes, coca leaves. But still, no one can isolate the magic inside. The plant stays mysterious, untamed. Then, one cool morning in the 1850s, a German chemist named Albert Niemann sits in his lab in Göttingen. You lean over his shoulder as he gently boils, filters, and evaporates the essence of coca. What remains is a white, crystalline powder. He tastes a speck. His tongue goes numb. His pulse races. Eureka, he whispers, though maybe it sounds more like a gasp. He names the substance, cocaine. That's where everything changes. The Spanish had mined silver from mountains. Now, the world will mine euphoria from molecules. But back in the Andes, little has changed. Farmers still pick leaves by hand. Families still chew them before long journeys. The plant remains sacred, only now it has a shadow twin across the sea, trapped in a bottle, waiting for the world to meet it. The next few decades unfold like a fever dream. Cocaine becomes the darling of European medicine, hailed as a miracle cure for pain, fatigue, even melancholy. Doctors claim it can revitalize the weak and animate the spirit. A few go further, calling it a divine gift to science. You can almost smile at the irony. The same words the Incas once used for their goddess, now printed in medical journals. And yet, in the quiet of the mountains, the locals keep chewing. They don't need test tubes to know the truth. They live it. Every bite reminds them of survival, not euphoria. But the tide is turning. The same greed that once drove conquistadors up these peaks will soon drive scientists and capitalists into a new frontier, chemistry. And they one T-stop until they turned the god's leaf into the devil's dust. You pause, standing between two worlds, the whispering Andes behind you, and the hum of Europe's laboratories ahead. Somewhere in the distance, glass bottles clink, and someone hums a lullaby of progress. You know what's coming. The powder that will corrupt dynasties is already awake. You step into the flickering glow of a 19th century laboratory glass beakers, brass instruments, and a faint smell of ether. Europe hums with invention, telegraphs, steam engines, anesthesia, and now cocaine. You watch chemists in white coats crowd around the crystalline powder Albert Niemann first isolated from coca leaves. They're wide-eyed, excited, and just a little reckless. It's the 1850s. Science feels like magic with better lighting. Everything can be bottled, refined, and sold. Cocaine, they believe, will change medicine forever. And for a while, it actually does. You sit beside a French doctor named Paulo Mantegazza. He's a dashing man with a mustache, so confident it deserves its own biography. He travels to South America, chews coca leaves with locals, and returns to Europe writing, God in his infinite goodness has made coca to relieve the sufferings of humanity. He even claims coca can make the tired man feel young again. You chuckle softly because that line sounds suspiciously like a 19th century energy drink slogan. Soon, medical journals across Europe echo his praise. Cocaine is advertised as an anesthetic, a stimulant, a cure for everything from depression to toothache. You picture doctors swirling it into wine, dissolving it in tonics, or sprinkling it on wounds. Historians still argue whether these early scientists were naive or knowingly reckless. Some believed in cocaine's healing potential with religious fervor. Others probably noticed the profits first. Either way, the powder spreads faster than reason. In 1863, a French chemist named Angelo Mariani decides to mix coca extract with Bordeaux wine. The result, Vin Mariani, a sparkling tonic adored by queens, popes, and exhausted writers everywhere. Even Pope Leo XIII carries a flask of it, claiming it helps him pray longer. You can almost imagine him sipping divine inspiration with a side of euphoria. The label boasts the world's most healthful and invigorating beverage, and for once, the marketing isn't exaggerating. People love it. It keeps them awake, cheerful, and wonderfully productive. They don't yet know it's also training their brains to crave it. Cocaine has crossed the line from medicine to lifestyle. In London, pharmacists sell cocaine lozenges for sore throats. In New York, department stores advertise cocaine toothache drops for children. You blink, reading that twice. Yes, for children. The packaging shows a smiling toddler. Somewhere, a parent probably thinks they're doing the right thing. You step back from the absurdity. Humanity has a habit of mistaking progress for wisdom, but amidst the excitement, there's a darker undercurrent. Some doctors begin to notice that patients return again and again, pale, trembling, unable to sleep. One physician writes in 1870, "They come for healing and leave possessed by it." Still, the craze continues. Cocaine becomes fashionable among intellectuals. Sigmund Freud, a young neurologist in Vienna, writes glowingly about it. You'll meet him soon enough. For now, you watch the powder quietly infiltrate every corner of society, medicine, music, even religion. And then, somewhere between the smell of ether and ink, you realize something subtle. Humanity has always chased this feeling. From fermented honey to opium poppies, from incense smoke to coca leaves, people crave elevation. Cocaine just made the pursuit faster, purer, and infinitely riskier. One scientist writes, "This discovery marks the triumph of chemistry over nature." You can't help but smirk. If only he knew nature always finds her revenge. Cocaine's journey from leaf to lab isn't just science, it's transformation. The Inca used it to talk to gods. The Spaniards used it to control men. And now, scientists use it to control the mind. Each generation, a new kind of faith. Each century, the same addiction to power. As you look around the lab, you see the irony everywhere. Bottles labeled elixir of vitality, drawers full of powder. The walls smell faintly sweet, like sugar and danger. Outside, the world is still innocent. Inside, the future is crystallizing into something far less pure. The chemist in front of you, Neiman's successor perhaps, scribbles notes as the powder dries. He doesn't know that what he's refining will one day create dynasties, destroy governments, and fill prisons. He just knows it makes his tongue go numb and his hands feel divine. You leave the lab as dusk falls, the golden light of progress fading into something colder. Behind you, a door clicks shut. Inside, glass tubes bubble, softly like the sound of 1,000 years of curiosity boiling over. In the quiet that follows, a simple thought lingers. The world has just learned how to manufacture euphoria. And once that's possible, there's no going back. You find yourself in Vienna, 1884, a city of candles, cigars, and restless genius. The streets hum with horse carriages and violins, and behind one set of frosted glass doors sits a man whose curiosity will soon make cocaine famous. His name is Sigmund Freud, and tonight you're in his study. Freud leans over his desk, scribbling furiously. You can smell ink, tobacco, and something faintly chemical. He just tasted a pinch of cocaine, the pure extract of the Andean leafand. His eyes glitter with excitement. His pulse races. He feels sharp, alert, alive. This, he writes, is the ideal tonic for the weary and the weak. You watch him grin into his notebook. He's certain he's found a miracle. He starts prescribing it to friends, to patients, even to his fiancée. He calls his paper Über Coca, on coca, a love letter to the powder. Freud claims it can cure depression, alcohol addiction, even morphine withdrawal. In his own mind, he's discovered the fountain of mental health. Historians still argue whether Freud's obsession was scientific or personal. Some say he saw cocaine as a tool to explore consciousness. Others think he just liked how it made him feel. Either way, his enthusiasm is contagious. Soon, his best friend, a doctor named Ernst von Fleischl-Marxow, tries it. He's addicted to morphine and desperate for relief. Freud suggests cocaine as a cure. At first, it works. Fleischl feels reborn. But within months, the miracle turns to horror. His body shakes. His heart races. He hallucinates insects crawling under his skin. Freud visits him often, still convinced it's withdrawal, not addiction. You watch him leave one evening, pale and shaken. The friend who inspired his confidence in cocaine is dying addicted to the cure. It's a quiet tragedy Freud will carry for years. He never fully admits guilt, but he stops writing about cocaine. The drug that promised healing has taken its first European victim. Outside Freud's study, though, the world isn't slowing down. The powder is spreading fast. Pharmacists sell it over the counter in Europe and America. Doctors recommend it for exhaustion, seasickness, asthma, even shyness. In Berlin, a surgeon named Karl Koller, one of Freud's colleagues, makes a discovery that changes medicine. During an eye operation, he applies a few drops of cocaine solution to the cornea. The patient feels nothing. The first local anesthetic is born. That moment, simple but profound, saves countless lives. It's also the reason dentists and surgeons today can work without pain. You almost forgive the powder almost. Still, the contradictions pile up. A single substance is both miracle and menace, healer and killer. And humanity, as always, seems terrible at moderation. You stroll through late 19th century Europe, opera houses, smoky cafes, pharmacies glowing with warm lamplight. Cocaine appears in everything from cough syrup to cigarettes. The labels read like poetry. For fatigue and sadness, 1 teaspoon restores vigor. Some even claim it enhances morality. You can't help but laugh softly at that one. Cocaine, the moral booster. History's sense of humor never fails. In America, a young pharmacist in Atlanta named John Stith Pemberton reads these glowing reports. A Civil War veteran addicted to morphine. He's looking for a Courant, maybe a fortune. Inspired by Vin Mariani, he mixes coca extract with cola nut caffeine syrup, sugar, and a dash of caramel color. He calls it Pemberton's French wine coca. You take a sip, sweet, fizzy, invigorating, a chemist's daydream in a glass. And like all good inventions, it arrives at the perfect time. But prohibition comes for alcohol, forcing Pemberton to remove the wine. He replaces it with a secret formula and renames the drink Coca-Cola. The world will never be the same again. For now, though, cocaine remains an accepted, almost glamorous part of life. Poets write on it, painters sketch faster, socialites whisper about white parties in Paris salons. They don't call it addiction, they call it enlightenment. You watch the world glow with manic optimism, the kind that always burns out too bright. Freud, now older, sits quietly in his office. He's left cocaine behind, moved on to dreams and symbols. Yet deep down, he knows the drug that nearly destroyed his friend also opened new doors in his mind. The irony isn't lost on him. He once wrote that the unconscious is timeless. You wonder if that's also true for human foolishness. Outside, snow falls gently over Vienna's cobblestones. Somewhere, a violinist plays a waltz as powdered brilliance slips into veins, teacups, and history. You can almost hear the heartbeat of the century quickening. Cocaine has found its profit, its purpose, and its path to every corner of civilization. And soon it will find its most profitable disguise. You lean on a polished counter in an Atlanta pharmacy sometime in the 1880s. The air smells like syrup and ambition. Behind the counter stands John Stith Pemberton, former Confederate officer, chemist, and part-time dreamer. He stirs a mixture of caramel-colored syrup, sugar, caffeine, and a mysterious extract from coca leaves. Steam rises as he pours the liquid into a glass and smiles proudly. He calls it Coca-Cola, and tonight, about to sip the most famous brand in history, one that began as a mild cocaine tonic for the weary soul. The first taste, sweet, fizzy, almost floral. You lick your lips, not realizing there's a hint of euphoria buried in that sweetness. The coca comes from the coca leaf. The cola comes from the cola nut. Together, they promise energy, clarity, and, according to early ads, relief from headaches, melancholy, and mental exhaustion. Historians still argue whether Pemberton truly understood the addictive potential of his drink. Some claim he was simply chasing a cure for his morphine addiction. Others say he knew exactly what he was doing, using the leaf's exotic appeal to sell a fantasy of wellness. Either way, Coca-Cola becomes an overnight sensation. By 1890, pharmacies across America sell it as a brain tonic. The ads feature women in corsets, smiling, beside slogans like, "Drink Coca-Cola, the ideal nerve and brain drink." And for a while, it actually delivers. Customers leave the counter cheerful, energized, and though they don't know it, yet slightly addicted. You wander the streets of Atlanta at dusk. The city buzzes with streetcars and laughter. Inside soda fountains, men and women chat, flirt, and sip brown fizz through glass straws. You can feel the cultural shift happening in real time. The industrial age is tiring. People work longer, sleep less, and crave stimulation. Coca-Cola offers an elegant solution, socially acceptable, high in a bottle. But progress always comes with a catch. When Pemberton dies in 1888, the formula passes through several hands until Asa Candler, a sharp businessman, with an even sharper sense for marketing, takes over. He cuts the wine completely, tones down the coca butt, doesn't eliminate it. He rebrands Coca-Cola, not as medicine, but as refreshment. The genius lies in the illusion. The drink still contains cocaine, but it's now sold as innocent pleasure. You can almost admire the audacity. By 1900, Coca-Cola is everywhere, from rural general stores to city fountains. It's the first truly global soft drink. People don't just drink it, they believe in it. Some say it makes them happier, friendlier, even more productive. In a way, it's the perfect metaphor for modern life. A little sweetness, a little speed, and a big dose of denial. In Europe, Vin Mariani still reigns supreme. Its mix of Bordeaux, wine, and coca extract, endorsed by royalty, writers, and even Thomas Edison. You picture Edison staying up all night, fueled by inspiration and coca wine, scribbling patent sketches under a flickering lamp. He wasn't alone. Jules Verne drank it. Alexandre Dumas praised it. Even Queen Victoria reportedly kept a bottle for nervous fatigue. The line between medicine, luxury, and addiction blurs completely. Then the press begins to whisper. Rumors spread that colored men in the American South are driven to madness by an ugly, racist myth that will soon shape drug policy for decades. Newspapers claim Coca-Cola makes factory workers violent and uncontrollable. Never mind that the science doesn't support it. Fear sells faster than facts. By the early 1900s, the government cracks down. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 forces manufacturers to label ingredients honestly. Under pressure, Coca-Cola quietly removes the cocaine from its formula but keeps using coca leaves, decocanized by special chemical treatment. You smirk softly. Even after the ban, the company continues importing coca leaves under government supervision. To this day, one factory in New Jersey legally processes them for flavoring. History, it seems, has a long memory. As Coca-Cola cleans up its image, cocaine moves underground. No longer the darling of medicine, it slips into jazz clubs, speakeasies, and back alleys. Its halo fades, but its power remains. You take one last sip from your glass. It tastes like progress, profit, and a little bit of betrayal. A sacred Andean leaf turned into an empire of fizz and nostalgia. Somewhere in the distance, you can hear a jingle, Forminga cheerful melody that will one day echo across every corner of the planet. The world forgets the leaf that started it all, even as billions of bottles bear its name. You lean back, exhale, and think. Cocaine no longer hides in Coca-Cola, but its story is still on every label written between the bubbles. You find yourself now in the smoky back room of a Harlem nightclub. Sometime in the 1920s, the saxophone moans, the lights are low, and the crowd sways like a tide. On stage, a trumpet player in a sharp white suit bends backward as he plays, his face shining with sweat and something else: intensity, speed, maybe even madness. In this world, cocaine has found a new rhythm. It's no longer dressed in white coats and medical bottles. It's hidden in pockets, folded in handkerchiefs, and whispered about in jazz slang. Musicians call it snow, flake, girl, or nose candy, and it fuels the pulse of a generation searching for escape. You sit at a small table near the edge of the dance floor, watching the scene unfold. A singer glides to the microphone, her voice low and smoky. She's beautiful, fragile, in the way only people who've seen too much can be. Between sets, she ducks into the dressing room, returns with a sharper smile, a quicker laugh. By midnight, the room is electric. Cocaine has become the muse of the modern age. It keeps the players awake through endless gigs, their fingers faster, their minds burning bright. It gives them confidence, charisma, a sense of invincibility. But when dawn comes, so does the cost. Behind the music's glamour, there's the crash, the paranoia, the exhaustion, the shaking hands. Some musicians call it chasing the white lady, a dance that never ends. You see it in their hollow eyes, their trembling notes, the way the tempo falters when the high fades. And yet, society barely notices. The roaring 20s are a carnival of indulgent speakeasies, bootleg liquor, and powdered dreams. Cocaine becomes part of the cultural wallpaper, fashionable, daring, even romantic. Hollywood joins in. Silent film stars like Clara Bow and Wallace Reed flirt with it on and off screen. Poets call it divine powder. Psychiatrists still prescribe it, though in smaller doses. The world is addicted to the idea of brilliance without limits. Then the Great Depression hits and the party ends. Money dries up, clubs close, the music softens, turns blue. Cocaine slips further underground, replaced by cheaper highs alcohol, opium, morphine. But the leaf never disappears. It waits, patient and quiet, beneath the surface of modern life, like a buried spark waiting for oxygen. Decades later, that spark will ignite again in the nightclubs of the 1970s and 80s, under mirror ball and neon lights. But that's another story. For now, as the last trumpet note fades, you step out into the Harlem night. The air is cold, the city restless. A newspaper flutters across the cobblestones, sits headline, half-torn but readable, America's dangerous new vice. You smile faintly. Dangerous, yes, but also seductive. Every generation, it seems, rediscovers the same old promise in a different disguise. Energy, freedom, control. The ancient leaf still sings, even as the world pretends not to listen. You turn your collar up and walk away, the echo of jazz and temptation following close behind. It's the late 1970s. You open your eyes to a world drenched in color, gold chains, disco lights, mirrored walls. The music throbs through the floor. The smell of perfume and sweat hangs thick in the air. You're in Studio 54, New York City. The age of glamour and excess has arrived, and cocaine. It's the decade's unofficial currency. A silver tray passes by, a neat line of white powder laid out beside a rolled-up $100 bill. A model laughs, a movie producer nods, a rock star leans in. Nobody whispers anymore. They snort openly, confidently, as if they're breathing in success itself. Cocaine is no longer the secret of doctors or poets. It's the mark of the elite, the drug of ambition, the fuel of Wall Street, the scent of every after-party in Manhattan. You take a step back and look around. The people here aren't addicts, not yet. They're dreamers, hustlers, stars. They call it the champagne of drugs. Smooth, clean, no needles, no shame. But under the strobe lights, something dark stirs. Behind every perfect white smile lies the same story. Less sleep, more lines, endless craving. By day, bankers brag about million-dollar deals. By night, they brag about how many grams they've gone through. The American dream has turned chemical. Out in Los Angeles, musicians record albums in 12-hour bursts of manic genius, their noses raw, their hearts racing. In Miami, smugglers and cartels build empires out of powder. And somewhere in the Andean highlands, farmers still pick the same sacred coca leaves, but now for blood money. It's ironic. The same plant, once used by Incan priests for spiritual strength, is now the backbone of the billion-dollar cocaine trade. You find yourself in a dim hotel room. The disco has ended. The city is quieter now. A mirror on the table, a few white lines left untouched. You can feel the tension in the air, the silence between heartbeats. Across the country, headlines begin to change. Cocaine, the white plague, Wall Street's dirty secret, the drug that's eating America. And then comes the mutation, crack. In the early 1980s, cocaine transforms again. Cheaper, smokable, deadlier. What was once a luxury becomes an epidemic. It hits poor neighborhoods hardest, especially black communities in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York. The media calls it America's moral collapse. The government calls it the war on drugs. But on the ground, it's something else. A war on poverty disguised as policy. You walk down a block in South Central LA. Police sirens scream in the distance. A mother holds her child as helicopters circle overhead. The same powder that fueled Wall Street mansions now fuels prison cells. The leaf hasn't changed, only the hands that hold it. In that moment, the story of cocaine stops being about chemistry or luxury. It becomes a mirror, a reflection of inequality, addiction, and the human hunger for more energy, more confidence, more control, more everything. You can almost hear the echo of John Pemberton's old syrup glass clinking somewhere in the background, the sound of history repeating itself. Because no matter the century, the city, or the price tag, the craving remains. You blink, and suddenly it's 1986. The TV glows blue in a dark living room. A solemn voice cuts through the static. President Ronald Reagan addressing the nation. Beside him, First Lady Nancy Reagan nods with perfect posture and perfect hair. Her smile is brittle as glass. You can almost hear the slogan forming, "Just say no." You lean back on the couch, a bag of popcorn forgotten beside you. This is the birth of the modern war on drugs, and it's about to reshape the entire planet. But behind the polished speeches and patriotic music, there's a darker rhythm pulsing, one driven by fear, politics, and power. Because the truth is, cocaine didn't just appear in poor neighborhoods overnight. It was delivered. Historians still argue whether certain U.S. intelligence operations in Latin America, like the covert funding of the Contras in Nicaragua, were indirectly tied to cocaine trafficking. Some journalists even claim the CIA turned a blind eye as cartels funneled powder north, money south, and chaos everywhere in between. Of course, the official story denies it, but you can't help but notice how the timeline fits together a little too neatly. Meanwhile, the streets are burning. In neighborhoods ravaged by crack cocaine, police raids become a nightly show. SWAT teams in full armor crash through doors. Families huddle. Reporters swarm. Politicians preach. Cameras roll as black and white mugshots flood the evening news. Almost all of them poor, almost all of them people of color. The laws tighten fast. The Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986 introduces mandatory minimum sentences. 5 grams of crack cocaine earns the same punishment as 500 grams of powder. The math is ugly. The outcome is uglier. One substance, 2 versions, 2 Americas. You walk through a prison corridor, the fluorescent lights humming softly. Inside, men sit on bunks, staring at walls, serving decades for crimes that once earned fine. Some have never touched a weapon, never harmed a soul, just caught with a few rocks of powder that destroyed their lives. Out on the streets, another kind of power grows. The D becomes mythic black windbreakers, night raids, helicopters, slicing through city skies. Zero tolerance becomes the slogan of the day. But the more you squeeze something, the more it slips through your fingers. Cartels in Colombia grow bolder. Planes loaded with cocaine fly low over the Caribbean, dropping parcels into the ocean where speedboats scoop them up. Miami becomes the main artery of the trade. Money laundering runs wild. Nightclubs, car dealerships, even banks quietly moving billions of narco dollars. And, as always, someone profits. Pablo Escobar, the so-called king of cocaine, rises to godlike status. His Medellin cartel supplies 80% of America's coke. He builds hospitals, schools, even soccer fields in his hometown. The poor call him Robin Hood. The government calls him terrorist number 1. You stand in the jungle, watching a convoy of white planes take off under the moonlight. The smell of gasoline, the buzz of mosquitoes, the whispered prayers of men who know they might not land again. This is where the war really happens, not in Washington press rooms, but here, in the damp shadows of the coca fields. American agents spray herbicides over Colombian mountains. Farmers cough as their crops, both legal and not, die under chemical rain. Cartels retaliate with bombs, kidnappings, assassination. On one hand, the White House declares victory after every major bust. On the other, supply never slows. Prices drop, purity rises. Cocaine is everywhere, in boardrooms, in alleys, in dance clubs, in suburban basements. You sigh softly. It feels less like a war on drugs and more like a war on people. Still, you can deny the strange irony. A plant once chewed by Andean farmers for strength has now become the center of the largest law enforcement effort in modern history. And all the while, that leaf keeps growing quietly in the mountain sun, unaware that it's been declared the enemy of civilization. Somewhere, a billboard flashes Nancy Reagan's smiling face. Just say no, you murmur under your breath. If only it were that simple. You wake up to the hum of a private jet, the smell of gasoline and luxury leather. Outside the window lies Medellin green mountains, red rooftops, a city built on fear and fortune. Below, an empire of white powder stretches across continents, and at its center stands one man, Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. You might have heard his name whispered like a myth, the billionaire drug lord who ruled Colombia with equal parts charm and terror. But here, in the late 1980s, he's not a myth. He's a living contradiction, both saint and sinner, savior and monster. You follow him through a sun-drenched ranch the size of a small town. Exotic animals roam, zebras, hippos, flamingos, a surreal zoo funded by cocaine money. Escobar's face is calm, boyish almost, as he flips through a stack of cash. Each bill smells faintly of jet fuel and blood. He's not just selling drugs, he's selling the illusion of power itself. At his peak, Escobar's Medellin cartel controls roughly 80% of the global cocaine trade. His income, estimated at $420 million per week. You picture mountains of money so vast that rats literally eat through millions in cash storage warehouses. The man is everywhere, sponsoring football teams, funding churches, handing out cash in slums. To the poor, he's a hero. To the rich, a nightmare. And to the government, an uncontrollable wildfire. Historians still argue whether Escobar ever wanted true political power or simply craved immortality. Some say he dreamed of becoming Colombia's president. Others believe he only wanted to protect his fortune from foreign hands. Either way, his empire grows faster than anyone can contain it. By 1989, he's on Forbes' list of the world's richest men. Think about that. A narco-trafficker, ranked among global billionaires. His photo printed beside tech moguls and oil tycoons. The audacity almost feels cinematic, but his rise comes with a cost written in blood. Judges, journalists, and politicians who oppose him vanish in explosions or gunfire. Commercial flights are bombed. Entire neighborhoods tremble under his reign. Colombia becomes both rich and ruined all at once. You walk through Medellin at night. The city hums with fear. Children fall asleep to the sound of gunfire, their parents whispering prayers. Billboards promise peace, but the people know better. Escobar builds his own prison, La Catedral, equipped with a jacuzzi, a soccer field, even a bar. It's a joke, disguised as justice. When the government demands his transfer, he escapes through the jungle. For a while, he's a ghost. Sightings flicker across Colombia, in taxis, in marketplaces, in rumors whispered between soldiers. The manhunt becomes a national obsession. Then, in 1993, it ends. A rooftop in Medellin, a gunshot, a body sprawled beside a telephone. They say the bullet came from police. Others say it was self-inflicted, Escobar's final act of control. Historians still argue about it, but no one disputes the symbolism. The king of cocaine fell on his own home turf. You stand beside his grave now, a simple stone surrounded by fresh flowers. Locals still visit. Some pray, some curse, some just stare. You notice a little boy leaving a candle. His mother whispers, "He helped us when no one else did." That's the complexity of history. Saints and monsters often share the same face, depending on where you stand. Escobar's empire collapses, but his legacy mutates. The cartels don't die. They splinter. Cali rises. Mexico rises. A new generation learns from his mistakes to stay quieter, smarter, more invisible. The cocaine keeps flowing. The roots change. The players evolve. But the game remains. You walk away from the grave, the air thick with incense and rain. Somewhere in the city below, another young man dreams of power, of cars, of gold, of respect. History, you realize, never really ends. It just changes a dress. And as night falls over Medellin, you can't help but think the ghost of Escobar is still here, not in the streets, but in every whispered promise that money can fix what pain cannot. The year is 1994. You're standing on a dusty airstrip in northern Mexico, the kind of place where the horizon never ends. The sun burns red as a plane descends low, its engines whining like a giant insect. When it lands, men rush forward, not soldiers, not police, but traffickers, farmers, and brokers, each one part of a growing machine that never sleeps. The Medellin and Cali cartels have fallen, but cocaine hasn't gone anywhere. It's just changed hands. The Colombians still produce most of it, but now they need partners to move it north. Enter the Mexicans. This is the birth of a new empire, one far more decentralized, far more ruthless. The Sinaloa cartel, the Juarez cartel, the Gulf cartel, names that will soon echo across the world like curses. You walk through the hangar as the bricks of cocaine are stacked neatly like white bricks of fortune. The smugglers speak quietly, respectfully. They call their boss El Chapo Joaquin, El Chapo Guzman short, unassuming, smiling like your neighborhood shopkeeper. But his tunnels stretch for miles under the earth, connecting borders, cities, and fortunes. If Escobar built an empire with bullets and bravado, El Chapo builds one with patience and precision. You watch as the cocaine routes shift from Caribbean waters to dry land, through Mexico's deserts, over fences, under rivers. Every shipment that reaches the U.S. border fuels another empire of guns, cash, and blood. The Mexican cartels don't just move cocaine, they own it. They build cities out of its profits. They buy politicians, police chiefs, journalists. In some regions, they are the government. Historians still argue when the line between narco and nation truly disappeared. Some say it was the mid-90s, others the early 2000s. But everyone agrees, by then, the cartels had replaced the state as the ultimate power in many towns. And with power comes spectacle. You step into a nightclub in Tijuana. The walls glow with neon lights, music pounding like a heartbeat. Everyone dances, everyone drinks, and everyone knows who owns the place, the cartel. Their soldiers stand at the door, gold chains over black shirts, pistols tucked neatly into their jeans. Outside, life is cheaper. Farmers who once grew corn now plant poppy or coca. Journalists who ask too many questions vanish. Police patrols avoid certain roads after dark. The violence feels almost ritualistic, like an unspoken tax. You remember Escobar's hippo, the absurdity of wealth mixed with horror. Now it's armored SUVs, diamond-studded pistols, narco corridos, folk songs, celebrating the very killers that haunt small towns. Somewhere, a young boy listens to one of those songs and dreams of becoming like them, rich, feared, untouchable. That's how legacy spreads, not through history books, but through music, myth, and money. And then the United States declares another escalation, the Merida Initiative. Millions of dollars flow into Mexico to combat the cartels. Helicopters, drones, surveillance tech, special forces. On paper, it looks like progress, but in the streets, the violence only intensifies. You stand on a hill overlooking Ciudad Juarez, a city divided by the Rio Grande, split between two worlds. Smoke rises in the distance. Below, sirens wail, dogs bark, lights flash. By Arling-Yiling, Juarez becomes one of the most dangerous cities on earth. Bodies found in ditches, Messages written on walls. A war without front lines, without uniforms, without end. You close your eyes. For a moment, it's almost silent again. You can hear the wind through the cactus fields, the hum of the border lights. And yet, beneath it all, you can feel the pulse of the cocaine trade, steady, patient, unstoppable. Because while governments fight their endless war, the leaf keeps growing, the powder keeps moving, and the money keeps flowing north. And here's the strangest irony. Every kilo seized, every tunnel discovered, every arrest celebrated, only raises the street price and makes the survivors richer. In this war, everyone claims to fight for justice. But cocaine doesn't care about flags or borders. It only cares about demand. And on the other side of that border, demand never sleeps. You watch the last plane take off from the airstrip. Its tail disappears into the orange sky. The air smells like dust, diesel, and inevitability. History doesn't stop for anyone. It just changes its uniform. You read back in the United States, now mid-2000s, where the cocaine trail ends in polished penthouses and golden sunsets. The border might be 1,500 miles away, but its heartbeat echoes in every club, every luxury suite, every midnight deal that never quite makes the books. You're at a Manhattan rooftop party. The skyline glitters. The DJ is a household name, and the air smells like champagne and designer perfume. Somewhere near the bar, a tiny, mirrored compact clicks open. A flash of white, a casual sniff, a laugh. No one here calls it cocaine. They say a bump. They say a little pick-me-up. The word itself feels too heavy for such a light crowd. It's strange, in the same country where entire neighborhoods were destroyed during the crack epidemic, cocaine has somehow regained its sparkle among the elite. Wall Street traders call it the focus drug. Tech founders say it helps them stay in flow. Models whisper that it keeps them slim on long shoots. You watch them glide through their conversations, confident, brilliant, and slightly too fast. It's the same leaf, the same powder, the same history, only the packaging has changed. Historians still argue whether America ever truly wanted to end cocaine use, or merely wanted to control who got to use it. The numbers tell their own story. Prisons overflow with low-level offenders, while high-end users party without consequence. It's almost poetic. The same substance that once fueled the slums now fuels the boardrooms that built them. You stroll through the streets of Los Angeles next. The city glows like an endless movie set. Palm trees, neon signs, tinted windows. Behind one of them, a producer leans over a glass table. Another sniff, another deal, another promise that this film, this project, this song will change the world. Hollywood and cocaine, a love story older than most careers. Back in the 1970s, the studios had secret powder rooms. By the 1980s, half the industry was rumored to be running on it. Even now, you'd be surprised how many scripts, songs, and late-night edits exist because someone didn't sleep for 48 hours. You pass a billboard of a glamorous actress, smiling, flawless, perfect. A week later, the tabloids will whisper about exhaustion and rehab. The cycle repeats, as predictable as the sunrise. In Vegas, the stories, the same hotel suites lined with gold, blackjack tables echoing with laughter, and somewhere behind a locked door, another pile of white dust. dealers in designer suits, users in designer lies. You can't help but smirk at the irony. The war on drugs never really reached this high up the food chain. Meanwhile, in places like Chicago and Baltimore, the residue of that same war lingers like a scar. Broken families, criminal records, and poverty reinforced by policy. Cocaine doesn't just create addicts, it creates systems that feed on inequality. You pause in front of a television in a downtown bar. The screen flashes between commercials, one for a new antidepressant, another for a high-caffeine energy drink, another for a luxury perfume called Addict. You can't help but think the language of addiction has become the language of aspiration. Even corporations seem to have borrowed cocaine's aesthetic: fast, efficient, euphoric, and always selling something you don't need but suddenly can't live without. You wander into a cafe. The barista offers you a double espresso with a grin. You chuckle quietly. Humans will always find new ways to chase the same old high: sugar, caffeine, nicotine, adrenaline, social media likes. The tools change. The brain doesn't. And somewhere, the original coca leaf still grows under the same sun, unchanged, innocent, quietly photosynthesizing, while the world argues about what it means. In Wall Street trading rooms, the energy is identical to those Andean farmers chewing leaves for strength. Different uniform, same hunger. The drive to go longer, do more, feel invincible. But at night, when the party ends and the city's glow fades, the silence creeps in, the euphoria wears off, the pulse slows, the whispers start. I can quit anytime. It's not like I'm addicted. You've heard those lines before, so has history. And maybe that's the cruelest trick cocaine ever pulled. It makes you believe you in control, right until the moment you not. The party lights fade, the music is gone. All that's left is silence, the kind that hums through walls, through memories, through the people left behind. If Section 11 was about cocaine's users, Section 12 is about its collateral damage, the ones who never touched it but still lived inside its shadow. You find yourself standing in a quiet kitchen somewhere in Ohio. The wallpaper is faded, the clock ticks too loud, and a woman in her 40s stares blankly at a photo on the fridge, her son smiling in a graduation cap. He was 19 when he overdosed. The police report called it accidental, but addiction never really feels like an accident. It's a slow erosion of hope, of love, of trust, until one day there's nothing left to hold on to. You sit with her for a while. She says he was smart, funny, curious. He started with weed, she says, then painkillers from a football injury, then the white stuff. Her voice cracks. I didn't even know what it looked like until it was too late. That's how most stories go. Slow, invisible, almost ordinary. Cocaine rarely kills instantly. It seduces first. You travel next to a small town in Colombia. A farmer kneels in the dirt beside a coca plant, his only crop. His son stands beside him, holding a rusted machete. The boy's eyes are bright but tired. He asks you if the people who buy this leaf are happy. You don't know what to say. He smiles, sadly, almost knowingly, and goes back to work. Because for him, this plant isn't a drug. It's dinner. It's survival. The war on drugs never gave him options, only warnings. You leave that village and drift across decades into homes cracked by violence. love stories broken by powder, and children who learned to lie before they learned to read. In Mexico, a mother lays a white rose on her daughter's grave, another casualty of the narco wars. She doesn't cry anymore. Crying doesn't change the price of a kilo, she says quietly. In Miami, an old man sits on a porch. He used to smuggle for a cartel. Now he just feeds pigeons. We were all ghosts, he tells you, alive, but already gone. You realize then that cocaine as true victims aren't just the dead. They the living who can forget. The spouses who waited, the children who hid, the parents who hoped. Addiction spreads like a shadow, not just chemical, but emotional. One person uses, 10 people suffer. You find yourself in a rehab center next. A young woman in recovery says, "People think addiction is about weakness, but for me, it was about silence." You ask what she means. She looks at the floor. When you grow up in chaos, silence feels safe. Cocaine makes you forget the noise. Her words hang heavy. You walk through the hallway, walls lined with motivational posters. One day at a time. You are not your mistakes. Some of the faces here are fresh, hopeful. Others are haunted, fading. And you realize this isn't just a drug story. It's a story about pain and the human urge to escape it. Cocaine just happens to be the fastest exit. You recall something a psychologist once said. Every addict starts as someone who wanted to feel better, just for a little while. The tragedy is, that little while always takes everything else with it. You return once more to that mother in Ohio. She's holding her son's old sweatshirt. It still smells faintly of detergent. She folds it carefully and places it in a box labeled "Keep." Then she whispers, "If he had just told me, if I had just noticed sooner." But that's the secret. Nobody notices until it's too late. Addiction doesn't roar. It whispers. It hides behind laughter, behind high-functioning jobs, behind fake confidence and late-night phone calls. And when it finally reveals itself, it's already deep inside the house, sleeping in the spare room, eating dinner at the same table. The ghosts don't always wear white. Sometimes they just have tired eyes. You leave that house quietly. The world outside looks the same. The sky blue, the sun warm, but you know it isn't. Because now you've seen the part of history that doesn't make it into documentaries or songs. The part where the cost isn't measured in dollars, but in absence. Cocaine doesn't just travel through veins. It travels through generations, as trauma, as mistrust, as silence. You take one last look at the horizon and realize this is where the real story ends. Not in a cartel shootout or a celebrity overdose, but in the quiet ache left behind. The world will move on. The markets will shift. The parties will continue. But somewhere, in kitchens and rehab centers and dusty fields, people will still be paying the price. And history, that quiet, sleepless historian, will keep watching. You open your eyes to the hum of fluorescent lights and the echo of marching boots. The year is 1971, and the United States has just declared war, not on another country, but on a chemical. President Nixon stands at a podium, grim-faced, announcing the war on drugs. You can almost hear the words reverberate through history. America's public enemy number one is drug abuse. It sounds simple, almost noble, but simplicity is a dangerous disguise. Because behind that phrase lies billions of dollars. prisons overflowing, and lives rewritten not by addiction, but by law. You follow the ripple. The government tightens border patrols, funds new agencies, and floods the streets with fear. Cocaine, once the party drug of elites, becomes the target of a moral crusade. But like all wars fought against desires instead of armies, this one gets messy. You watch as small-time users are hauled away in handcuffs while the kingpins continue their business from marble mansions. You see politicians smile for cameras while covertly funding the same regimes that profit from the powder. The irony is almost poetic if it weren't so cruel. By the 1980s, the war has turned into spectacle. Television shows, mugshots, newscasters whisper about crack babies, and fear becomes currency. You sit on a couch in a dimly lit American living room as a Just Say No commercial flickers across the screen. A stern mother figure warns you, cocaine destroys lives. Then the screen cuts to black dramatic music, flashing hotline numbers. Historians still argue whether those ads actually saved anyone, or just made people hide their addictions better. Meanwhile, another story unfolds, quieter, bloodier, far from the TV glow. In the mountains of Colombia, planes funded by foreign governments drop herbicides on coca fields. The poison kills crops, rivers, livestock, and dreams. Farmers cough in the dust, and children stare at the dead fish floating in the water. You realize this war was never fought on equal terms. It wasn't soldiers versus smugglers. It was power versus poverty. In Medellin, Pablo Escobar becomes both villain and folk hero. His empire grows from that very chaos. He builds houses for the poor, schools for children, all while exporting death by the ton. People call him El Patron. The same world that condemns him also buys his product. You almost laugh, a slow, tired kind of laugh, because hypocrisy has never looked so polished. The CIA, meanwhile, runs covert operations in Latin America. Some historians whisper that certain US-backed forces even trafficked cocaine to fund their wars. Officially denied, of course, but the dots on the map start to connect themselves. You drift now into the 1990s, the Clinton years, 3 strikes law, mandatory minimums, private prisons bloom like weeds. Cocaine is no longer a moral issue, it's an economy. In one part of the world, cocaine users get therapy and documentaries. In another, they get cell bars and a number instead of a name. You walk through a prison corridor, concrete walls, steel doors, fluorescent hum. Most of the faces here are black or Latino. A guard says, "War on drugs," and shrugs, as if that explains everything. You ask a man behind bars what he did. "Possession," he says softly. "It was 1 rock. I was 19. He's 50 now." You keep walking, your footsteps echoing down the hallway, a metronome of wasted years. Meanwhile, the cartels evolve. They grow smarter, faster. They buy politicians, own ports, fund militias. Every time one leader dies, another rises, meaner, richer, younger. The war keeps needing villains, so it keeps making them. AD Agent once said, "It's like trying to kill an ocean by shooting the waves. You can't fight demand with bullets. You can't arrest an entire economy of despair." And yet, governments tried, and still try. You pass through a 2000s airport security checkpoint. Sniffer dogs, full-body scanners, red-faced customs officers. Somewhere in a suitcase lies a gram of white powder. the same white powder that started in a poor farmer's hands 3 continents away. You think about how many lives touched that single gram. The laborer who grew it, the chemist who refined it, the pilot who flew it, the dealer who risked his life to move it, the banker who laundered its profit, the politician who condemned it on TV but took the donation anyway, and finally, the user, just one person, alone in a bathroom mirror, chasing a feeling. That's the full circle of the war on drugs, a cycle that punishes the weak, empowers the ruthless, and leaves everyone else pretending to be clean. You recall a quote from a weary journalist: "We didn't end the drug trade, we just outsourced it." By the 2010s, the rhetoric softens. Politicians start saying public health crisis instead of criminal plague. Rehab centers replace prisons in the language of reform, but not always in funding. Portugal decriminalizes all drugs in 2001, and overdose deaths plummet. Historians still debate whether that's proof of progress or just geography. In the US, conversations shift toward opioids, a new chemical villain wearing an old mask. Cocaine steps back, but never disappears. You glance at the clock. It's past midnight. The war has been running for 50 years now. The battlefields have changed, now fought online, in border tunnels, in silent government offices, but the results, the same. Drugs still flow, families still break, cartels still thrive. The only thing that really evolved is how we talk about it. Softer words for the same human ache. You lean back, exhale slowly, and realize this war didn't fail because it wasn't strong enough. It failed because it was aimed at the wrong enemy. The real battlefield was never in Colombia or Miami. It's in the mind, that fragile place where pain seeks escape, and history keeps replaying the same mistake. You blink and find yourself in a nightclub, not smoky like the old jazz bars, but glowing with neon blues and holographic reflection. The year could be 2010 or maybe 2025. It hardly matters. The bass thrums beneath your ribs, and people dance in slow motion, their faces washed in light. Someone in the corner leans down, a flash of white against mirrored glass. Cocaine hasn't gone anywhere, it's just learned to dress better. The powder that once fueled railroad barons and revolutionaries now rides in Teslas and private jets. It's the same ancient leaf, the same chemical whisper, only the backdrop has changed from temples and pharmacies to nightclubs and encrypted apps. You look around. Everyone here has a story. There's the startup founder who swears a bump before a pitch sharpens his focus. The tired investment banker telling himself he only uses on weekends. The influencer whispering to a friend, "It's organic Bolivian, fair trade," as if that somehow redeems it. Historians still argue whether the modern era's relationship with cocaine is worse or just more hypocritical. The stigma has softened, but the habit remains the same, speeding through exhaustion, buying the illusion of control. Now the trade itself is digital. Dealers use emojis instead of code words, disappearing messages instead of alley whispers. Dark web markets bloom and die overnight, replaced by new ones with shinier names. Bitcoin moves the money faster than any mule could run it. A single click replaces a border crossing. You scroll through your phone, pretending you're just curious, but the screen reveals an empire. Listings for snow, flake, pearl dust, each with user reviews, 5-star ratings, shipping options. The future, it seems, found a way to industrialize even desire. And in the mountains of South America, nothing has changed. The farmers still scrape resin from green coca leaves at dawn. They still earn pennies while someone else earns millions. The drones now patrol the skies, spraying defoliants from above. The chemicals seep into rivers, poisoning soil that once fed children. A mother coughs in a small Bolivian valley as her crops die not from drought, but from foreign policy. You imagine her husband standing beside her, machete dull, saying nothing. The silence is too heavy to fill. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, a tech CEO snorts the same plant's powdered ghost in a rooftop suite overlooking San Francisco. He tells himself it's not addiction, it's optimization. You almost laugh, again that same slow, tired laugh from before. Humans never change. We just keep finding cleaner excuses. By the late 2010s, global production reaches historic highs. The UN calls it a resurgence. Purity increases, prices drop, demand soars. In the UK, cocaine becomes cheaper than coffee per gram. In Australia, a single line costs as much as a week's groceries. You see the pattern. The world divides itself into consumers and consequences. Then the pandemic hits. The clubs close, but addiction doesn't. Dealers adapt faster than governments. They start home delivery. Some users switch to ordering through food apps. Extra napkins mean something entirely different now. Cocaine becomes a quarantine comfort, a silent rebellion against isolation. And when the borders reopen, the flow triples. The cartels, leaner and smarter, expand through Europe and Africa, diversifying like multinational corporations. They invest in crypto, logistics, even social media influencers. It's capitalism in its purest, coldest form. One European port official calls it the invisible empire. You scroll past the headlines: mass seizures, record busts, millions of dollars in confiscated powder, and it all starts to blur. Because no matter how many tons are burned, there's always more. The plant keeps growing. The hunger keeps spreading. Historians will one day call this era the digital drug age. Maybe they'll admire its efficiency. Maybe they'll mourn its emptiness. You pause, closing your eyes. You remember the Andean priests offering coca leaves to the gods, whispering for strength. And now, centuries later, humanity still offers the same leaf, but to different gods. Profit, speed, escape. A soft wind hums through the club's ventilation system. You can almost hear the ghosts of history swirling in it. Miners from Potosi, poets from Paris, dreamers from Atlanta, all bound by one fragile plant that promised energy and left exhaustion. Someone hands you a glass of sparkling water. You sip it, tasting nothing. The fizz feels like déjà vu. You look around again at the people, the glow, the motion, and it hits you. Cocaine is no longer the story of a drug. It's the story of civilization itself. The pursuit of more. More speed, more success, more now. The irony is perfect. In chasing energy, the world just made itself tired. You lean back, close your eyes, and the music fades into a soft, static hum. Somewhere far away, another shipment is being loaded into a cargo ship's hold, disguised in coffee, labeled as sugar, destined for someone's party, someone's night. someone's ruin. And you think maybe history doesn't repeat. Maybe it just gets better Wi-Fi. You wake to the sound of wind, not city noise this time, but real wind, the kind that rolls across mountain valleys. You're back where it all began, the Andes, the birthplace of cocoa. The air is thin, clear, almost sacred. You watch as an old Quechua farmer kneels in his field at dawn. He cups 3 bright green leaves in his calloused hands, whispers a prayer, and tucks them gently between his teeth. No chemicals, no commerce, just tradition. For him, the coca leaf isn't an escape, it's gratitude. You taste the leaf's bitterness through him, mild, earthy, honest. The high is barely there, more like a whisper of focus. A reminder that, long before laboratories and logos, this was simply a way to survive the altitude and honor the gods. You realize something quietly profound. Cocaine, the chemical, corrupted dynasties. But coca, the leaf, built civilizations. The tragedy lies in that single twist of history, when humans decided that nature was in tea enough, that purity needed power, that calm needed speed. You step closer to the farmer. His son joins him, barefoot in the soil. They smile at you, unaware that their humble crop once shaped empires, toppled governments, and rewired the modern brain. The world they live in still bears the weight of that decision. The same mountains that once fed the Inca now feed the global underworld. And yet, the cycle keeps spinning. Governments still ban it. Scientists still study it. Users still chase it. And through it all, the plant just keeps growing. Patient, green, eternal. You imagine time itself as a circle. At one edge, the Andean priest offering coca to the sun. At the other, a nightclub glowing blue under leads. Between them, 1,000 years of human hunger. Historians still argue whether humanity ever learns from its obsessions. You already know the answer. Maybe that's why the story feels so dreamlike. You've walked through centuries tonight, from mountain temples to Victorian pharmacies, from jazz clubs to Silicon Valley rooftops, and every stop told the same story in a different voice. People trying to feel something more than ordinary. You picture Sigmund Freud scribbling in his journal, Edison sipping his coca wine, Escobar counting his fortune, a Wall Street broker whispering, just one more. Different eras, same impulse. And now, as you stand on this quiet slope, it all feels smaller. All that greed, fear, brilliance, destruction, just dust swirling in morning light. A breeze carries the faint scent of coca leaves, sun-warmed and simple. You close your eyes, and it feels like absolution. The world doesn't need to conquer this plant. It just needs to remember what it once meant, because buried beneath every headline and overdose, beneath every empire built on white powder, is something older, a leaf that taught humans endurance, connection, and awe. You smile softly. For the first time tonight, the story feels complete, not finished, just resting, like the earth after rain. And as you start to drift, the sound of the farmer's prayer fades into a whisper that feels like both warning and blessing. Take what you need, but never more than you can carry. The wind carries it away, and you let it go too. Your breathing slows. The images soften. The mountains dissolve into mist. The lights of cities fade, and you're left with just the rhythm of your heartbeat. Slow, steady, unhurried. You've traveled through thousands of years tonight, through worship and greed. medicine, and madness. You've watched humanity discover, glorify, outlaw, and rediscover the same thing again and again. The powder changes form, the hunger never does. But here, in this quiet moment, none of that matters. You're safe. The story is over now. The world keeps spinning outside your room, but for you, it's okay to stop. You can feel the chair beneath you, the sheets brushing your skin, the whisper of air through the fan. Every sound slows down, like time itself is taking a breath. If your mind still wanders, let it preside. It's earned that freedom. Maybe it drifts back to those mountain fields. Maybe it lingers on a glass of fizzy brown cola, or a single white grain that changed the world. Whatever image stays, let it fade gently, like smoke dissolving into morning light. Tonight, you don't need to judge the past or fix it. Just understand it and rest in that understanding. You did well to stay awake through all this. Now it's okay to let go. Close your eyes, inhale slowly, exhale fully. History will still be here in the morning. Sweet dreams.